Jennie Merrill. I am so happy to be here with you. Here comes part 2, y'all. Get ready. Jennie, tell us about the many things you do here at the Southern Food and Beverage Museum.
Well, yeah. Thanks, Bobby. Besides, get excited whenever you come in the door. I'm pretty stoked about having to get to hang out with you today. We do a lot of kids programs. So I'm the Director of Education, and we do kids cooking classes. We do both virtual and in-person camp, all things kids cooking.
Well, this is your cue, Mama, because if you've got little potential cooking campers at home or some of Jennie's alumni, go get them now because they are going to want to learn this trick too. What are you making?
Well, I am making a maple pecan monkey bread, which is actually pretty similar to the one that I grew up with. And you're right, we do have a secret trick in store, and it has to do with this right here.
I'm all about it. Biscuit making, not so much.
No, this is so easy. It is slightly messy, but that's okay because kids like that.
About how long should it take?
The prep is actually going to take about 20 to 30 minutes, and the cooking itself is about the same. So all in all, you've got yourself at about an hour, but it's very easy, it's very methodical, there's no dangerous flames or anything like that. So it's a pretty straightforward recipe. It's perfect for breakfast, and it's especially perfect for the fall.
Well, I'm glad to know how long I have to wait for my taste.
Exactly.
So thank you, Jennie. You have at it. I can't wait to see what you're going to do.
Oh, I'm so excited to do this too, and thank you for joining.
My pleasure. Mwah.
Hi everybody, my name is Miss Jennie, and today we are going to be making maple pecan monkey bread. So I am very excited to do this class with you, and this is the chance where we kind of get to get in the kitchen, get our hands a little messy and dirty, but the results are going to be so perfect. So the first thing I would say that you should do is take my lead. Maybe put on a costume, maybe put on a silly hat. Do something that's going to make you feel extra special in the kitchen, because cooking is fun, and that is why we're here today. The next thing we want to do is we want to wash our hands. Safety first. We want to make sure, especially because I have a feeling you're not going to be eating all of this monkey bread yourself. You might share. You might want to wash your hands so that everyone else eating it is also going to be really, really safe. The next thing that we want to do before we get started is we want to preheat our oven to 350 degrees. Now, our ovens take forever to preheat, so depending on your oven, it's always good to just start it off by preheating your oven so it can do its thing while you do your thing. Y'all ready to roll? Let's go. Now remember, I'm going to be in the comments too, so I can talk to you. If you have any questions, feel free to put them below. First thing we're going to do is we are going to make our cinnamon and sugar mixture. So I'm going to take a gallon bag right here, and I am going to take a ½ cup of sugar in my measuring cup. Now keep some sugar on hand because you might need more depending on how many you are making. I'm doing the full recipe today, but you always want to, if you need a little extra cinnamon or sugar, it's good to have it right next to you. So I put in here into my measuring cup, I need 1/2 cup of Domino sugar. Going ahead and opening my bag, placing it in the Ziploc. Next, I'm going to do my cinnamon. I need a ½ teaspoon, actually I need a whole teaspoon of cinnamon. Honestly, I might do a little bit extra because cinnamon is so good. Here we go. You're gonna dip it in. Now, you can use the top to do this. However, I suggest taking the top off. That way, you can put in your measuring spoon, and then you're gonna shake it even inside, just like this, okay? So it's basically flat. See how I have a little extra on top? I'm actually fine with that, so I'm gonna go ahead and keep it. All right. So this is what I like to kind of call our sugar seasonings. You can actually buy in the stores cinnamon and sugar put together, and that's because they taste so great together. So I'm gonna close the top of the Ziploc. Be a little tricky, make sure it's really closed. And then fold it over a little bit just to make sure. And then you're gonna shake it like this, okay? Shake it, 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 and let's see. What you're looking for is you wanna make sure that there's no big white chunks and big chunks of cinnamon. That's how we know it's all mixed together. So I still see a lot of kind of strips of white, so I'm gonna keep shaking to the side. All right, perfect. It's all mixed together. We're gonna put this to the side, but open it, because now it's time for our biscuit cutting. All right, so I've got right here some buttermilk grands, and this is always a big old surprise because it pops and you don't always know when it's gonna pop. So if you're a little nervous, you might wanna have an adult with you. You find the part where it says start here, and then you take your nail or a fork or a spoon and you loosen it up. Peel up, just like that. You never know what it's gonna hit. It's gonna be a surprise. Crank it open and go ahead and just kind of dump your buttermilk biscuits onto your cutting board and throw that to the side. Next one. Start here. Peel. Ooh, is it gonna happen? Oh, is it gonna happen? I don't know. All right. You might see if it doesn't pop open, it says press spoon at seam. Well, we know what a seam is because we have seams on our clothes, right? It's where the two pieces of fabric come together. So same thing, it's where the two pieces of cardboard come together. That's the seam. Sometimes I can do this with my fingers by pushing in. Oh, and it worked. But another thing you can use is the back of a spoon, and you can push it in if that doesn't work. Same thing, I'm gonna dump my biscuits here on my cutting board. This, my friends, is where it's going to start to get quite messy. Before we get our hands all cinnamon sugary, I want you to get your pecans ready. So these little bags are basically half a cup, so I'm not going to measure this out, but feel free to measure out a half a cup of pecans if you want to make sure it's exactly right. So keep this here, because what we're going to do now is we are going to cut each of these biscuits into quarters. Now, do you know how much that a quarter would be? You? So a quarter is a fourth of a whole. Just like you need 4 quarters for a whole dollar, same with this. So we're gonna cut it into quarters. We're gonna cut it into 4 little bits that are even. When that's done, I'm gonna stick those quarters into my cinnamon sugar bag. Now our recipe calls for only to do it 4 at a time. Well, I have a mound of biscuits and that seems like a lot of time we have to wait. So I might crank that up just a little bit and do maybe 6 or 8. The reason you want your pecans is when you put your dough chunks in here and we shake it, you're gonna take them out, put them here, and then we're gonna do a layer of pecans. So it's gonna go dough, cut, cinnamon sugar, place in, pecans, repeat, okay? The other thing you can do is you can cut all of your dough rounds at the same time if you want to. Why not? We're here, you can experiment. We have an end goal, and that's to have something edible to eat, but there's a lot of different paths we can take to get there. So I'm gonna take my knife, and I'm gonna go like this so you can see as well. I'm gonna take one biscuit, and for those of you who might be new to using a knife, I'm using a very child-safe knife. This one is not gonna do too much to you, but you do wanna just be careful whenever using any knife in any circumstance. Place your dough round, and then you wanna make sure that your non-dominant hand is anchoring whatever you're cutting. So I'm right-handed, so my right hand is going to use the knife. If you're left-handed, then you need to do the opposite. Your left hand cuts and your right hand would anchor. But I'm right-handed, so here we go. Point your knife tip down always. Saw back and forth using your arm right here. You're gonna saw back and forth, And then this is sticky, so I'm going to take my knife point to the bottom of the cutting board and pull it towards me, keeping that knife tip on the cutting board the entire time. Take another dough chunk, push down and pull. Do the other one, push down and pull. All right, here we go. Time to take a cinnamon sugar bath. Man, I'm so jealous of this dough right now. I wish I could do that. Woo! See, it's gonna get messy in here. We're gonna do some more. We're gonna go ahead, we're gonna cut. Remember, point your knife tip down and draw towards you. Take this other chunk and draw towards you. Now, it's important to know, the warmer these biscuits get, the harder it's going to be to keep a dough chunk like this. We wanna make sure that we're doing it pretty quickly so they don't warm up on us, because once they do that, it is going to be very hard to get it off the knife. Curl your bag down, shake it up. Great. Open it up, and beautiful, beautifully cinnamon covered dough chunks. Oh, I can't believe I almost forgot. Grease your pan. Trust me, grease your pan. You want to make sure, because otherwise you're going to be having to help clean this out. It will never happen. It'll take you a year of your life and you'll just be cleaning this pan over and over and over again. And nobody wants that. You want to graduate college, you want to do all sorts of things. So hold it away from you. Make sure to get all the corners. Now we can put them in. All right. So I take my dough and I'm going to put them around. You can take a couple. So I didn't even fill up the first layer, as you can see. So what I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna cut some more dough chunks, cinnamon sugarize them, and then I'm gonna put a layer of pecans on, because I want all of this bottom of the pan to be covered. Then I'm gonna do pecans, and then we're gonna do it all over again. So let's get chopping. All right, so remember, you always want to point your knife down all the way and drag it along the cutting board, keeping those fingers out of the way. All right, let's take these tippy biscuits over here. Here we go. I am so excited to eat this. You know, I haven't had monkey bread in so long. Other places call it pull-apart bread. And pull-apart bread, it doesn't have to be cinnamon and sweet. It could be savory. It could have cheese and bacon and broccoli in it. I want you to take a second and think, what's your favorite kind of bread? Maybe you grew up eating crawfish bread. You could make crawfish pull-apart bread if you wanted to. Think about, what would you want if it was a savory pull-apart? What would you want in your dish? Because these are buttermilk biscuits, and honestly, they could be sweet or savory. You can actually use this exact same recipe, but instead of maybe cinnamon sugar, you have some herbs like oregano and Parmesan, and just kind of get it all covered like that, but with the herbs. There we go. This is why you can't put too many in, they stick to each other. Now I understand the recipe. I'm gonna separate them a little bit with my hands. Shake, 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 shake. Ooh. It's like a volcano of sweetness. All right, I'm gonna take a couple of clumps at a time, place them in the bottom. There we go. Okay. Now, as you can see, I have my first layer of dough. The great thing about this is we're ready to put our pecans on. Now you want to make sure that, yeah, you can see a little at the bottom, but overall, not too much. It's a nice, even layer. So I'm going to take my pecans over here, and you could sprinkle them directly from the bag, but I'm actually going to put a little in my hand. And then I'm going to do this trick that I like to do when I have large, like, you know, any sort of nut, or even something that's granulated. And I like to rub them together like this over the pan. And I'm dispensing them as it goes around the pan. And that creates, -1, an even layer all the way around with my hand dispenser. Okay, layer 2 coming up. Here we go. Now again, remember, you want to work relatively fast as you feel safe. So if you feel like you are having a hard time kind of keeping up with cutting, maybe grab a sibling or grab one of your adults that live with you and have them kind of get on board too, right? If everyone's going to be enjoying this monkey bread, then they might as well pull their weight, right? Okay, getting all my biscuits out the side. All right, I learned my lesson with the clumping, so I'm gonna put a couple in at a time, fold it over, and shake. Take them out. You're gonna start to notice that the biscuits that you already covered and put in to your pan, you're gonna notice they're gonna start to change color a little bit. The newly cinnamon and sugared still are very, you know, you can still see the ingredients, but the cinnamon is gonna start to melt onto the biscuit. That's good. We want that. We want it to have some time to soak in, and that means that our biscuits are gonna have all of this cinnamon covering and it's soaked into the dough instead of just sitting on top. There we go. Another thing to keep in mind is, and I'll tell you a very tragic personal story. I once made monkey bread for Easter one time. Brought it over to my friend's house, so excited. I did the same thing with the biscuit dough, but I made one very crucial, fatal error. I can't believe I did this. What I did is I filled the pan all the way to the top. Now, I want you to think about it for a second. I filled it all the way to the very top. Think for a second, why do you not want to fill this all the way to the top? Can you come with some ideas? Talk to the adults, see if you're right. I bet they know. Well, it is the same reason you do not want to fill your cupcakes all the way to the top. It's the same reason you don't want to fill anything that has dough in it all the way to the top of the pan because it's going to overflow. I owed her a kitchen stove cleaning so bad. It was cinnamon sugar all on the bottom. The whole kitchen smelled like burning. It overflowed. I was so embarrassed. I thought I ruined Easter. I didn't, but keep that in mind. We don't want to fill this all the way to the top. So if you have a pan that's different than mine, if you have this is called a bundt pan right here. And what a bundt pan is it has this middle. This has fancy decorations so that when you put bread or dough in here, when it bakes, it's going to have the fancy decorations on the side and look quite lovely, like a fruit cake. But you want to make sure the recipe calls for 2 of these containers of of biscuits. If you have a smaller bundt pan, that might actually be too much. So be willing to get another pan out, maybe a loaf pan or something smaller that you can then put the extra leftovers. Because we still want you to be able to eat it, but it might just be too much with this particular pan. All right, this is clumped together. Let's shake it up. Shake it up. You know, I am so surprised. I thought we would actually need more Domino sugar in this bag. Turns out the recipe was right. A ½ cup is going a long way. Make sure when you're doing this, you're pressing it into the sides too. You don't want to just clump it around the middle. You want to make sure that you have some around the edges. All right, can you see any pecans in here? maybe 1 or 2, but I can't really see any pecans through these layers, so what does that mean? It's time for layer 2. Go ahead and grab your pecans. Have you tried the hand dispensing method yet? I encourage you to try, especially if you're not afraid of a mess. Place it in your hand like this. Put your other hand on top. Flip it the other way and rub loosely like this, like you're trying to start a fire with sticks. There we go. I might have to adjust a couple. But there we go. Now, I am going to do these last 4 rounds, and I think I'm going to have room in my pan because, as you can see, my pan is only halfway full. If it gets to 3/4 full for you at this time, stop and use another pan for the rest of your grands because you don't want to have a Jennie of 2014 Easter event. Believe me, it's not fun, and nobody appreciates it, and you will be cleaning that oven for forever. That and the bundt pan. Cinnamon sugar is not easy to clean off, I'll tell you that. That's why we want to make sure we're using as much spray as possible. Now, just a reminder, remember, this dough is the very last part of the dough, so it is the warmest. Can you start to see how it's sticking like this, right? That's because it's warmed up. These are buttermilk biscuits. They're flaky. The reason they are flaky is because in the dough, there's butter between every single layer. And what happens is the butter melts. And as it gets warmer, the butter gets warmer, which means that it's gonna start not wanting to stick together as much. We actually call this lamination, but that's a word for another day. Let's go ahead, shake, 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 shake. And here we go. Now this is our final layer. You can see this is just repeating and repeating over and over again, the same kind of method. And that's what a lot of sometimes baking is. Icing, cupcakes, all in a row. Yeah, these are getting definitely warm. Good thing it's the last one. We made good, quick work of it. And there's a final reminder, remember, you want to take your knife and you want to put it, make sure the knife tip is always touching the bottom of the cutting board, just like this, and then we are going to drag it. So you're actually cutting it with the tip of the knife, but you're controlling it with your arm. Got one more. There we are. Look at that. Look at all that cinnamon sugar left over. Do you have cinnamon sugar left over? What you gonna do with it? There are so many amazing things. You can put on toast. I think that's a very popular one. Last shake. An extra dramatic effect, just how I like it. Here we go, we're gonna take them out, place them especially over some of our little pecan bit friends. And if you have areas of your pan that need to be evened out, because we want it to be very even, go ahead and intentionally place the dough in those pockets. This one's a little bit high, I'm gonna move it over. You don't need to press it down too much. So when you're putting these in, don't mash it down, just lightly place them here and there. Okay, how does that look? Does that look pretty even? I'd say so. It's gonna get all together in a second, and it needs to stick together with more than just the cinnamon sugar. This sugar is going to melt, and it's going to become sticky, and it is going to stick the biscuit dough together as they kind of rise up in the pan and glue themselves to be one. But then it's not as much pull-apart bread. We need something syrupy and tasty to make it just ooze apart. And that, my friends, is step 2. Y'all ready? Let's go ahead and clear our space a little bit. We want to take some of our items we're no longer using. So I'm going to cap this Domino's sugar and take out a different one. Put my pecans to the side. Measuring spoons, keep this and this out of the way. So my little project can hang out over here, and we are gonna go melt some butter. To make the sauce, there are 3 ingredients. So simple. We've already only been working with 3, well, technically 4 with the pecans ingredients. This is 1 less than that. So it's very, very minimal. I'm gonna have my things ready. I'm gonna need brown sugar, and I'm gonna need a cup of it. So I have my cup ready, and in the recipe it says packed. We're gonna get to that in a second, but while we're melting our butter, I want you to think about what packed might mean when we're talking about brown sugar, okay? We also have our maple syrup, and I have my tablespoon that I'm going to use. The first things first, let's melt that butter. I need 3/4 cup of butter, and if you can believe that, 3/4 cup of butter is actually almost 2 sticks. 1 stick of butter is only a 1/2 cup of butter. Yes, that is right, you heard that. An entire stick of butter is only a 1/2 cup of liquid. Wild, that's why people use so much. You can also see on the sides all of the information. So take a look, because knowing the amounts of butter and what it is in tablespoons and ounces and cups is so important with baking, because they'll throw all sorts of different things. One recipe might be tablespoons, the other might be cups, and so you need to be able to convert that pretty quickly in your head. You can always use Google, but it's better if you can do it on the fly. So right here, I have 8 tablespoons. 8 tablespoons is equivalent to 1/2 cup, which is also equivalent to a 1/4 pound, okay? So this recipe calls for how many cups of butter? You know? 3/4 cup, exactly, good listening. So we're gonna go ahead, unwrap it, stick it in here. It doesn't matter if it's a little cinnamon sugary, because it's all going in the same place. And that 1/2, so if this is 1/2, in order to get to 3/4, we need another 1/2, because another stick of butter would then be a whole cup. Here's a 1/2 cup, whole cup, 3/4 of a cup. So we're only adding a 1/4 of a cup of butter into our 1/2 cup, which leads us to 3/4 cup. Let's go melt this. Little hot tip before we melt this. You want to melt it in the microwave, in a microwave safe bowl. You don't want it to burn. An easy way to do this is to just do it in 30-second increments, okay? So I'm gonna go over here. Looks like somebody already has something. Add 30 seconds, start. Use your eyes. One of the most important things in the kitchen is to use your senses. Does something smell like it's burning? Does garlic smell like it's cooking? Do I hear a loud bang? Oh my gosh, where did that come from? And using your eyes. Right now, I wanna make sure that this is melted. A lot of recipes call for softened butter. Right now, this right here, this is softened. And you know it's softened because you can still see the dip of the structure of the stick. But if you put your finger in it, it makes a dent. We want it liquidy though. We want it all melted. So I'm gonna keep going. I've got 3 seconds and it's not melted yet. So I'm gonna add 30 more seconds. But it might not take 30 seconds, so I'm gonna keep my eye on it. All right, it's starting to pool, it's melting, and where are we at? There we go. Swish it around a little bit. I still have a little bit of an iceberg of butter in here. I'll give it just a second more. There we go. And here we are. Who doesn't want to take a dip in this pool right now? Pool of butter. Okay. So as you can see, it's liquidy, swishes around. If you still have some little tiny chunks, go ahead and just lightly take a fork or a spoon and stir it. The heat of the butter is going to melt the entirety of it. So it will melt while it's in the bowl. So we have our melted butter here, and next what we are going to do is we are going to mix in our Domino's dark brown sugar. I love the darker brown the sugar, the better it's gonna taste. You can use light brown sugar, but honestly, I'm a fan of this one. I would take the bag out, and then what you're going to do is you are going to take it and squeeze it into your measuring cup. Now, I just remembered. Have you thought about what packed means yet? Any ideas? So packed means it is going to be pushed down. There's a lot of ingredients when we're baking that we do not push down. Like flour, a lot of times we want it to be light and fluffy, but brown sugar especially, usually recipes call for packed. So here's what I do. I use the back of my spoon. You can also use your fist if you want to, if you're feeling really into it. I don't blame you. But you don't want to put a whole bunch, you want to put some sugar in. Use your spoon and push it to the bottom. Push, push, push. You know what, I might use my hand. At least it's going to be flat. We do want it to be flat. So you can even take your fist and you can push it down. Now you might see the difference. When I was just putting in sugar like this, you can see how it's mounded all the way, and you can see holes through it. But then look at the packed side. It's all packed down like sand. This is very much like sand. If you're making yourself a little sand castle and you don't pack the sand into the sand castle mold or the cup or whatever you're using, it's gonna fall apart. And you wanna make sure you're doing the same exact thing with brown sugar. So go ahead, check your measurement. I'm at 3/4 cup now. I still need some more. Let's go ahead, stick it in. All right, remember back of the spoon if you wanna be nice and clean, or fist if you wanna be really, really, really messy. All right, where are we at? Let me get this flat and even. I am at 1 cup now. If you go ahead and see, I've got the 1 cup line right here. And if you look in, it's so packed, things aren't falling out. It's all the way to the bottom and even. So I'm gonna go ahead, I'm going to take this and using my spoon, I'm going to help it into the butter bath. Now you could dump it all in. What I would do though, is I would start mixing it in with the butter and then do the other half. There's a reason for this. The reason is, if you dump it all in, it's gonna be extra, extra hard for you to whisk it together. So if you do it a little bit at a time, and then you go back and put in some more, it's gonna make your job easier. It'll be way easier to blend. The other thing is this is hot butter, and this is cool sugar. If you just dump all of this cool sugar in, it's gonna cool the butter down too. And it's gonna make it extra hard for it to blend all together. You can already see right here, and we call this actually saturation. And with saturation, you can have supersaturation, oversaturation, and you have this separation going on. We want it to all go together. All right, now you'll notice I just put this in and whisked it together in thirds. So I did 1/3 or 1 part of the brown sugar, and then I did 2/3, the second part, and I just put in my third part, my third if you will, into the brown sugar. And as I'm mixing it, here's what I'm looking for. I can still see butter on the sides. So what I wanna do is I wanna take my spoon, curve it around the middle, and fold it in to the middle. So I take my spoon so that it's touching the side of the bowl, and then I flip it in almost like a wave on a beach into the middle. You don't want it to, there's gonna be some separation, that's okay. We just don't want a lot of it. We also want it to look about the same consistency. So what I'm looking for, that means no big bumps, not grainy or gravelly. I want both the butter and the brown sugar to change consistencies and become one. So I want it to be smooth and creamy, and you can see how it's changed. See how the whole mixture is now becoming one and it's looking like a glaze? This is what I'm looking for. Now it is ready to accept my third ingredient, and that is my syrup. There we go. I'm gonna go ahead and take my tablespoon, which I already have ready, and I am going to pour it over my bowl. Okay. Now, you can see a little bit of this convex top, right? So I'm gonna pour that in. It's okay if it's a little extra. The biggest thing is you don't wanna see the sides of the tablespoon. You don't wanna see any of the white rim around. I'm using my spoon to scrape it out. Put that to the side, and I'm gonna mix it together. Y'all, we are almost done. We're about to spoon this sugary, phenomenal goodness all over the top. Ooh. Well, that's exciting. That was an unexpected treat. What do? That's part of the fun of being in the kitchen, right? All right. Now, we're gonna say hello to our monkey bread again. Put our ingredients to the side. And I want you to watch. I'm gonna hold my bowl in one hand. I'm always gonna be working over the dish. I don't wanna have my bowl over here and I have my spoon and I'm taking it over here to drizzle. Do yourself a favor. Always have something as close as possible to you. And as much as it's over the dish, that means if it spills, it's just going into the dish. It's all right. So here we go. And I'm going to make sure it is even. Now you guys know what even means. It's kind of like when you make your bed and you have your blankets all the way to the top. You don't have one corner of the bed hanging out. You have it all over the entirety of the bed. Here we are. Now, I am now being very strategic. I'm looking for parts that don't have any of the sauce on the top. So now I'm taking my spoon and purposely filling those parts in. Now I use a spoon on purpose because I am going to yet again use this versatile tool to smooth out the top. What's gonna happen is this sugar and butter mixture, now that it's together, is gonna harden again out here in room temperature. But as soon as I stick that in the oven, what's gonna happen is it's gonna become very, very liquid again. It's a chemical change. And so it is going to go and drip on in, and it's gonna fill in all those cracks and crevices, kind of how water runs through rocks in a creek. And you can see that, that's what's gonna happen with the cinnamon sugar. So I'm using the back of my spoon to smooth it just like frosting on a cupcake. Yes, indeed. I'm very glad I greased this pan because it is going to be very sticky. And I have to do the dishes. You might have to do the dishes too, huh? Okay, gonna get it all in there. Okay, there we are. Get it off the spoon by tapping it. I want all that sugar. Here we go. So what we have here, you can see it's an even layer of dough. There's even layers, well, somewhat even layers of pecans in there. And now we have this very even, smooth layer of of brown sugar and butter and maple syrup. I cannot wait. We're gonna pop this in the oven. Remember, you have set your ovens to 350 degrees. And one of the great things is it should already be preheated because it took us about 20-30 minutes to get this ready. We are also going to keep it in the oven for 20 to 30 minutes. You are gonna know it's done because the very top is gonna look hard like a biscuit. It's gonna look You know how this is doughy? It's gonna look the complete opposite of that. That's what we're looking for. Now be careful, if you filled it too high, you wanna make sure that you're also keeping your eye on so it doesn't spill over. We're gonna go ahead and put it in our spooky oven that has crazy lights, and I'm gonna go ahead and set my timer. For 20 minutes. Now, don't get your hopes up. Just because it says 20 minutes does not mean it's actually going to be 20 minutes. 20 minutes that's when you need to make your first check in the oven. So at 20 minutes, you're going to take a peek. Does it look like it's hard? Does it look like it's cooked? If so, you can always put in a knife into the middle, and if you don't see a bunch of dough coming up with it, you might be close to being done, but 20 minutes is like your warning that you need to start paying attention pretty darn close to this monkey bread. When we get back, what we're gonna do is we are actually gonna do something pretty wild. When this is done, we are going to flip it onto a plate into a beautiful mold. All right, we'll see you next time.
And we are back with Jennie Merrill. I heard there was some maple pecan monkey bread finishing. Thought I might want to check that out.
I bet you did.
And Jennie, during the last few minutes, some of our viewers, we put it in the oven and did a little movie magic.
Yeah.
What have people missed in these last steps, and how do we get that out of there?
A lot of baking and rising. So as you can see, one of the important things, remember we didn't want to fill it all the way up to the top, 2/3 at max. The reason is because all those biscuits started getting bigger and they started getting fluffier, and now we have it out. Now this also, I took it out of the oven after a full 30 minutes. After 20 minutes, I went in and checked, and I had to wait 10 more minutes. Now, that's not done. We also have 10 more minutes that we had to wait in order for it to cool down a little bit. This is important because when it came out, it was almost to the very, very top.
It was.
Kind of
It's sunk a little. It's like a gin fizz.
Exactly. It needed to come down, but there's another really important point, and we're gonna see if it worked. All of that maple syrup, that butter, that brown sugar that went together as the glaze, that needs to get a little bit cooler again. Because when it's hot, 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 it's runny, and that's how it got to the bottom of the pan and ideally glazed the entire thing. However, if we don't let it sit and do its thing and chill for a little bit, then it's still gonna be runny and it's all gonna fall apart. So hopefully, because we have done our due diligence and we were patient and we didn't stick our face in here and just gobble it all up, hopefully that
Which is what I would have done if you hadn't been here for the last 30 minutes telling me no.
Fair enough, I was there, I was ready with my fork plate, ready to go.
I've been stabbed.
Now comes the movie, the mystery, the magic, and a lot of very careful planning. This is tricky, Brent, because...
Hey, that's why I'm watching.
Okay.
I'll give you all the room you need.
We're about to flip this out, and hopefully it's not gonna pull apart everywhere.
If it does, we'll just do it again and no one will know.
Exactly, right? Okay, so this is definitely where you wanna use an adult help, okay? This is not an easy thing to do, so be very, very careful. What we're gonna do, because the pan is still hot, if it was a little cooler, then what I could do, maybe I'll do that. Okay, so we put our plate, make sure that you get a plate that's larger than the edge by at least a little bit. You'll see right there, I've got about 1/2 inch to 1 inch in some places over the top. It can't be smaller, otherwise it's gonna go absolutely everywhere. So there's 2 ways you can do it. One way is you can hold it together, but that's really, really hot. So what I'm gonna suggest is pretty wild. You push the plate down on top of the monkey bread. Let me get this off of the trivet a little bit. And onto a hot pad. Now this is why you want an adult. Okay. I've got a firm grip. It's really heavy. Now pushing the plate, you want to push it onto the bundt pan. See how I'm putting the effort?
I can see your fingers are turning colors from the effort.
And flip it over.
Good flip.
Thank you. Now, let's see if it worked.
Hey.
There we go. We only lost that one. I think
and
that's
this is the
meant
one
for
that
you.
this is the one that I was supposed to eat.
Exactly. You can see how it's glazed all the way around. You can see in the pan all of that brown sugar and maple syrup went
Oh, man.
shooting to the bottom. What do you think?
It's so good. It's like eating donuts covered in caramel, covered in pecans. But
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not going to be shy if that's all right.
No, totally. So this is going to be what your final product wants to look like.
This is absolutely delicious.
And it's called pull apart because each of these little chunks of dough that you spent so much time hand pulling apart and knifing apart and then putting in the sugar, that has melted, and then you can just pull it apart. Washing your hands, of course.
Yes.
These are the times we're in. So
We're using forks for safety.
there we go. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Thank you, Brent, for joining me.
Hey, this
I'm
was so
glad
much
you
fun.
enjoyed.
Jenny, I love working with you and love what you do with kids programs. And
Thank you.
thanks for joining us, and stay tuned for the next video.